Good morning, everyone. This is Harry and Sam from the New Zealand Astrobiology Network, and it's a beautiful Tuesday morning today, and we're talking astronomy and night sky and what's out there. New Zealand Astrobiology Network is a charitable trust. We are a charity who want to see space and astronomy out there, and we have three fundamental questions that we want to answer to. One of them is, what is life? Because nobody knows what life is, and I always find this endlessly fascinating. And then the second one is, where is everybody in the universe? And again, that's something that nobody knows, despite rumors that alien might have landed on Earth. We haven't found any yet. And the third one, which probably is my favorite, is, what is the future of humankind? And I do believe that we can make this future ourselves through everything we do every day. All our actions that we're taking right now, they are going to influence who we're going to become in the future as a species. And I have, as I was saying, Sam here with me, and both of us, we love space, and we've dedicated our life to space. We worked really hard to be able to do space. And sometimes we have people who come and ask us, why do you bother with space? What is space? Why would you work for something that is so far away and remote, and you might never even fly to space, but yet your energy and everything is put into it? So I think for me is our species. I want our species to survive in the future. We only have another billion years here on Earth until the sun is going to be too hot for us to live here on Earth. And it's the frontier as well. It's how we challenge ourselves to just get the best of everything we can. And there are many ways in which this is happening right now, because we challenged ourselves to go to space. We have technology that is now saving life on Earth, and these are called space spin-offs. There are filters, there are cordless tools. Who would have thought? We just bought these amazing cordless tools, and they're actually invented for space exploration. And so there are a lot of benefits that come from space exploration that maybe we're not so acquainted with every day in our daily life. But space is everywhere. Everywhere we look, there is some invention, something that happens. Mobile phones. If we didn't have space technology, we wouldn't have mobile phones. So I'll ask Sam. Sam, what is it for you and space? Why is it that you're so passionate about space?
Well, I'm curious about how things work, and of course curious about how space works. So when I look up and see a star or the planets, I want to know, how do they get there? How do they work? And at the moment, what's really topical, there's, Saturn and Jupiter are doing a conjunction, which means Saturn and Jupiter are getting closer to each other. So what that means is Jupiter's quite bright, and Saturn is not as bright. And as they get closer and closer, you'll see these two planets getting, almost merging into one with the naked eye. But of course, if you look through a telescope at them, they don't merge. They just get visually quite close. The important thing is to remember they don't actually get close. They're still a long, long way from each other. Jupiter is 800 odd million kilometres from the sun, and Saturn's about 1.4 billion kilometres. So even when they're as close as they get, they're still 600 odd million, half a billion kilometres apart, which is 4 times the distance from Earth to the sun. So it's a huge distance. But what's happening at the moment is you're seeing Jupiter and Saturn in the evening, just as the sun goes down. They just appear, and they're getting closer to the sun, visually, but they're also very close to each other. And what's happening, of course, is the Earth is whizzing around the sun, and we're on our journey towards the other side of the sun from Jupiter and Saturn. So they just have this handy little line up at the moment. Now, the closest approach of the two visually, the planets occurred yesterday. last night, which we missed because we were sort of looking at a whole lot of clouds instead of the planets. Unfortunately, that's what often happens with astronomical events. The clouds come out and hide them, which is...
We had eclipses like that and transits of Mercury and Venus that were cloudy as well.
Well, we were very lucky with the last transit of Mercury. We had our telescope hanging out the window in Wellington, looking between two layers of cloud that just by chance happened to make the sun visible as Mercury was transiting the sun early one morning. Actually, it was just before Christmas a couple of years ago. A very chance encounter with Mercury, which was fun. It was good. I think we just caught the end of the transit.
But last night was completely cloudy.
No, we couldn't see anything. And often, in the Wairarapa, you do get a glimpse of one or two stars, even if it is cloudy and yucky weather. There's always a break somewhere. But no, not last night. It was wall-to-wall cloud.
But let's just say that this doesn't happen just in one instance. When you have a conjunction, things are moving together gradually and then they spread apart gradually. So you will still be able to see the two planets being very close.
Totally.
A few days.
Yeah, for the next couple of days. The problem is, as each day goes by, they're getting closer and closer visually towards the sun. So it'll be harder and harder to see Saturn.
So what else is there in the sky? Not necessarily in the astronomy sky, but in the space.
Well, other things that are occurring is, we all know about Elon Musk and his Tesla cars and all the other activity he gets up to. Of course, he's the driving force behind SpaceX, which is a very large company in the United States, very young company that's been launching a lot of rockets for a whole bunch of customers with their Falcon 9 rocket. And what he's doing is it's recoverable. So the rocket flies up into space, and then the first stage lands back down not far from where it took off. In fact, often he lands on a ship at sea, and then it sort of floats back into port, and they reuse it. In fact, one rocket I think has been used 7 times now, which is so. Of course, that's driving the cost of launching right down. Now, also what he's working on is, because that's not the end game. What he wants is a much larger rocket to take people to the moon and to Mars, ultimately to take people to Mars. So he's building a rocket called Starship. Well, it's actually that's the spaceship, and then the rocket stage of Starship is imaginatively named Super Heavy. So the two rockets will sort of bolt together. Starship has its own sort of rocket engines and stuff, and that'll fly off to Mars. And the first stage is the Super Heavy booster, which he hasn't built yet, but what he's been testing and building is the Starship. Now, I think it was last week, Starship, named SN8, so the 8th prototype, was launched, and it flew up to 40-odd thousand feet. They shut the engines off, and it floated back down to the ground, where it landed with a large bang, because it landed a bit heavy and blew up. And it was quite a spectacular show, and I'm sure many people probably caught it on YouTube. But it was reasonably successful. They took this rocket that he built, flew it up quite high, and then tested turning the rocket round and then relighting the engines to get it to land. And it didn't land. It landed spectacularly because it blew up, but it wasn't a complete failure. It did come down sort of under some form of control, and it actually, where it blew up, it actually landed where it was supposed to. So not too bad. But of course, what's happening? This is very rapid development. It was only last year that SN1 was launched, and that looked like a hot water cylinder from someone's house, and that was it flew up only 1,500 feet and landed just a few hundred meters from where they launched it. And all of this is about testing all the systems, the rocket engines and everything on this big spaceship. And this last SN8, it had 3 rocket engines on it, Raptor engines they're called, so they're new kind of engine. And it launched and went up, and it worked, and the 3 engines worked. They had some problem, I think, with the fuel tank, which is why it blew up at the end. But SN9, the next one, that's nearly ready for launch. And there's bits right up to SN15. So there's a heck of a lot of development and prototyping still to come. But I think it's worth watching because the turnaround on these things is amazingly quick. And when you compare that to what NASA's developing with the Space Launch System, or SLS, which is the other really big rocket, and that's the rocket that NASA wants to use to put people on the moon, that development is slow, incredibly slow. They were supposed to launch last year a prototype, and it's now been delayed till next year. And here's Elon Musk just launching one thing after the next.
So do you reckon he's going to go first?
I think he will, yeah. Unless he has a major incident, but they still work under quite a bit of control and stuff. So
Elon Musk is one of those people who deliberately does things to go to Mars. He actually said very many times he wants to go to Mars. And so if you look back, everything he does, all his Tesla electric vehicles that he built are so that he can do the same thing on Mars. Because Mars, for instance, doesn't have any dinosaurs or any fossil fuel that we can mine from there. So then we will have to use solar power. We will have to use the sun. There is or nuclear power. Or, these are the two available sources of power that we will have. So then, what he does is creating all these opportunities for humans to live on Mars, which I really like. Actually, I think he's doing a great thing. He's a huge example of someone who's driven by something that he really wants to make it happen, and he's the one who makes it happen.
Yeah, well, he's all his business stuff that he's doing, the Hyperloop, this tunnel boring thing he's got going on under Los Angeles, that's all about finding out how to transport people around on Mars. Because when you build a settlement on Mars, how do you get from one place to the next? Well, you can't really wander around on the surface because there's hardly any atmosphere. You get bathed in radiation. So it makes a lot of sense to do a tunnel. So why not test that on Earth? Why not perfect the technology here so you know what to take, exactly what to take to Mars. And of course, there's electric vehicles. That's another way. You're not going to have combustion engines driving cars around on Mars. It's going to be electric. So another opportunity to, one, make a lot of money, but two, also perfect the technology.
He's breaking boundaries, and talking of which, let's listen to a song called Boundaries from my favorite New Zealand composer. His name is Rian Shi, and he actually lives in Wellington, and he makes amazing space music. So here we go.
little difficult.
Are there boundaries to the cosmos?
How Carl Sagan beautifully says it, infinity and eternity. And are there boundaries to the universe, to the cosmos? These are two words that have inspired people throughout millennia. When was the first time the word cosmos being used in ancient Greece? And it really meant everything that surrounded us. And that's what we've been doing for all these years. We've been looking out there at the stars, and we've been just wondering in awe what they were doing. And speaking of which, our sun is a star and has been kind of dormant in the last, how many years? 11 years. It does go through
5.5.
Yeah, it does go through a cycle, but now there is some action on it.
Yeah, well, things are heating up. Well, not getting hotter. Maybe a tiny bit out of its sort of overall heat that it pumps out. But the sun goes for a cycle, an 11-year cycle of having not a heck of a lot of activity to then having some more activity, and we measure that by counting sunspots. So we've been counting sunspots for about 400 years. So we can see this, this cycle quite clearly. And of course, the more we watch the sun, the more we see. Now, of course, I have to warn people: don't watch the sun because it'll burn your eyes, and certainly don't look at the sun with a telescope because it'll burn your eyes completely out. It's a dangerous thing to look at. But if you have the right gear and you have a special telescope, you can observe the sun and you can look at these sunspots, and you can look at all these other things that are occurring on the sun. Prominences, which are kind of bits of plasma material getting thrown out into space. Yeah.
I think just to make, just to clarify this, the trick with looking into the sun is that we don't have receptors for pain inside our retina. So when we look into the sun, even though it hurts our eye, it destroys our cells in there, our receptors, we don't feel it. So that's why maybe people don't take that so seriously, because they can't feel anything. It's like, what's wrong?
It's kind of like sunburn, right?
Yeah, it's like sunburn.
And then you have this irreparable damage.
So be very careful.
Well, and of course, so what we're seeing now is a few more sunspots, which is quite exciting. For 5.5 years it's been quiet. We haven't seen a lot of sunspots. It's sort of a cyclical thing, so they reduce for a bit and then they go down to almost nothing. In fact, there was a large number of days, nearly half a year, where there was no sunspot observed at all on the sun, and now we're starting to see a few of them appear. And
so you are taking pictures almost every day.
Yeah, well, we get out there with our solar telescope and we take pictures just to have a look at what sunspots are there and what other activities are occurring. And over the course of the solar cycle, there will be more and more of these. And of course, as there's more and more of them, there's more of a chance of a solar flare and these huge releases of energy. And these releases of energy can be disruptive here on Earth. They can make it difficult for satellites to communicate. They can disrupt power grids if they're really enormous eruptions. Fortunately, they don't happen very often. But it just shows what our star can do.
Is there a street around here that is called Carrington?
Well, yeah, there's a Carrington house in Carterton. But of course, the Carrington event in, I think, 1856 or 1857 was one of these huge flares. And it erupted. There'd been a scientist, Carrington, he was looking at these sunspots through appropriate, obviously, solar gear, so he didn't burn his eyes out. And he was watching these sunspots, there was a lot of them, and he saw a flare. And then about 2.5 days later, a whole lot of really weird things started happening on Earth. People were seeing the aurora far further south and north towards the equator than they'd ever seen it before. There was arcing between railway lines and all these unusual phenomena happening all around the world. And luckily it wasn't like we have now. They weren't so dependent on technology. But this was what they call a coronal mass ejection. So an enormous amount of energy was blasted straight at the Earth. Had it happened now, we would have lost power grids and it would have been incredibly disruptive. But this is what happens on stars. They do this all the time. Now, we have a very quiet star. Our sun's very, very docile. Other stars have enormous flares and enormous coronal mass ejections. So we're very fortunate.
But the sun is, what is it? Is starting to have some action. So from an astronomy observing point of view, you can come, put your eye to the telescope and see something, tiny little dots.
Yeah,
those tiny little dots are the size of Earth, which is so mind-blowing.
Well, and we forget actually just how big the sun is. The sun is massive. If you line up 110 Earths, that's the diameter of the sun. So it's pretty huge.
But yet, if you look at it in the sky, if you stretch your arm, the width of your pinky at arm's length is that's half of your pinky is the sun. So that's how big it is.
Yeah, it takes up half a degree.
Yeah, you can put your pinky over the sun and cover it. I mean, don't try it, but
yeah.
And so is the moon. They look so similar in the sky, but not because they're the same size, but because the sun is so huge and so far away. And in fact, if you turn the sun lights off, let's just say we're in trouble and something happened on the sun and it completely disappeared, it will take 8 minutes for the light to come to Earth. So that's how far away it is. Even light that travels the fastest in the universe, almost 300,000 kilometers per second, even light takes 8 minutes to come here on Earth from the sun. So it's quite a far away.
Well, 150 million kilometers. It's quite a journey.
It is quite a journey, and we had quite a journey this year, and we were very privileged and very happy to be able to come here and talk about space and astronomy with our audience. And we're also very grateful to the amazing people at Stonehenge Aotearoa that made possible for us to have this Mars exhibition there and have displays and do science talks. So thank you, Ken and Richard, who today are away, but they're going to be back for the next time. And we just wanted to wish everybody Merry Christmas, not Happy Solstice because that was yesterday, but Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and to have an extraordinary year ahead.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.